So I didn't know that if you fall in water, you drown. So it comes this horror of why I cannot breathe. And when I felt the desire to be with the dog, I was with the dog. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of cool. Pure silence. And I love this silence so much that sense of wanting to be immersed in that silence didn't end there. Even after the experience, for the rest of my life, I crave that silence. I'm like floating above her. Like if I'm in the ceiling and I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria's completely unaware of what is happening.
So when you said it was the scare of your life, was it scary looking though? Is that why it scared you? And you were like, ooh, what are they? Like, were they, when you say they're dark beings, were they what I would describe as like demons type looking? Is that why they were scary? Or no, you're just saying to see them scared you in general?
Yes, I love you ask this question.
Static in the mind, but the signal's clear. Close both eyes and you disappear. Slide through the seams and reality scream. Wake up inside of an in-between. I'm not here to preach a story you can't feel.
So what happened is that I was born in Bogotá, Colombia, and my parents would leave us at the care of a lady, a maid, and she was a person that really didn't pay much attention to us when my parents were not around. And early one morning they left. My oldest sister, she was close to 4. Like I just said, I was close to 3. And realizing that nobody was watching, like, hey, let's go play. Hey, just being children. And we went to the back of the house where there was a patio. And in this patio, there was a tank. And we supposed not to play in this tank because it was a tank that held a lot of water, about 900 gallons of water. It was a big tank. And the main purpose of the tank was for, back then in the day, for hand washing clothes. And my sister and I found a ball and decided, let's play cash across the tank. I mean, like nowhere else than where we were told not to. But that's the fun, no? Then we went, we climbed the walls of the tank and we started to play. And she was sitting on the flat surface for scrubbing, which was a little safer. I was on the other side of the tank with my legs bended, like leaning very precariously in this tank. And my sister threw the ball, didn't apply enough force. It fell on the water, it was floating, and I thought, oh, of course I can grab it. What I did, I leaned forward, tried to grab the ball, it rolled on the surface of the water, and I fell in the tank. So imagine, the first feeling was that this water was frigid, cold. People have the misconception that because I'm from Colombia, I come from hot weather country, but Bogotá's high up in the Andes. So very early in the morning, it could be, I don't know, between 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the water, imagine the feeling of falling into this frigid water was like just right there. My breath was like this feeling when you just get like, and then it came the horror of realizing why I cannot breathe. I had never been in a pool, never been in a bathtub, never had the head underwater. So I didn't know that if you fall in water, you drown. So it comes this horror of why I cannot breathe. And when I am fighting in, like, imagine the sense of wanting to escape from this tank, something happened. Just like a miracle, like this feeling of like going from absolute terror to complete peace. Peace and serenity and calmness. And it was the sense I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to breathe anymore. I didn't know what happened. I just knew that there's nothing I have to do anymore. And I was in complete peace. And here I want to answer already a question that people ask a lot. How can you remember this if you were just 2 years old? First, because imagine the trauma of drowning. That's the first contrast I experienced. I love to use the word contrast. The next contrast was, imagine going from that horror to that absolute peace. The next contrast, this tank was a very dark space. It was entirely made of cement. It had a roof. It was early in the morning. So the last thing that I saw when I drowned was darkness. It was the darkness of imagining fear and dark. And once I entered into the state of peace, light. And it was a light that came from below. And it was able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. And like, now there is light. The next contrast, the last thing I heard when I was drowning was my heart. Imagine when you're very scared and that heart is pounding in your chest. And I could hear it in my head like a drum. Boom, 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 boom. And then silence. Complete and absolute silence. And that silence that comes with such peace. So I call it the silence behind the silence. Pure, pure silence. And I love this silence so much that sense of wanting to be immersed in that silence didn't end there. Even after the experience, for the rest of my life, I crave that silence. So how can I forget that? It's like later in life, I would hide in chapels. I would go under the bed, under the covers, like I wanted that silence back. The next thing is that now I am in this, which is sublime sense of peace. And then suddenly I started to see bubbles. And the bubbles were surrounded by light. And I'm like, whoa, this is so much fun. And then with that childlike spirit, I started to chase the bubbles. And it's when I turned around and I saw my body in the water. And at that moment, I had the clear realization, oh, that's my body. It wasn't like something like scary or unusual. It was familiar, like, yeah, that's my body. And now it comes the most incredible thing and the most amazing contrast, and is that I was born as a very sick child. And I spent those almost 3 years of my life always sick. I didn't know anything else than being sick. Imagine now, say I am in the most amazing state of well-being. I'm like, I feel like, wow, incredibly well. What do you think I did? I look at the body and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going back there. And I made the conscious decision of leaving the body behind. And I turned around and I left the body and I just started to just completely be immersed in that joy. And when I turned around, at that very moment, I started to see flowers. And there was flowers blooming from nowhere. And then suddenly these flowers picked me up. So imagine even the sense of dimension as we know it changed, because how big these flowers had to be to pick me up. And I was picked and I was being now carried. And I was being carried like in a forward direction. I remember just kind of like a dark space, but I could see light at the end. And then I was just completely enjoying that moment. And when I am in that state of bliss, being carried by the flowers in just a flash like that, I appear in the room where the maid, was listening to soap operas in the radio. And she's there lounging, listening to the soap operas. And I'm like floating above her. Like if I'm in the ceiling and I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria's completely unaware of what is happening. And she's just there like, and then because nothing happened right there, like in another flash like that, I appear in my mom's path. My mom was walking towards her bus stop. Like I said, she left early that morning. And then like in the lady's room, I am in the maid's room, I'm like floating above her. And I just look at my mom. And I have to tell you, so give some background here because this is important. My mom had got a new job. And what is the feeling when you got a new job? Of course, you have to go to your new job. It's the first day of your new job. But no, when I was floating above her and I said, "Oh, that's mom," at that very, very moment, she stopped. She did not hesitate. She knew exactly like something is happening at home with one of my children. And she turned around and started to run back home. She forgot everything about her new job. Imagine how pressing that had to be for her to just turn around. And then she started to run, and I'm looking at her. And I am wondering, like, oh, why mom is running? I didn't think anything, just why is she running? And then at that moment, I got distracted because there was a dog at the end of the street. And I adore animals. And the moment I saw the dog, I forgot everything about my mom. And when I felt the desire to be with the dog, I was with the dog. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And then I saw a park. And the moment I felt the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. And I just like, imagine that. I'm like, this is so much fun. And I started to play a game of going places. So imagine all this sense of time and space as we know it, completely gone. And I am having the best day of my life when in another flash, everything in this experience was like happening like that, like in a flash. I appear in a realm that was made of pure, intense, shiny light. And now it was the first time in my almost 3 years of life that I felt I am home. Imagine the feeling of being home. What is to be home? Is to be embraced, to feel comfortable, to just imagine you being a whole day working out, tired, busy, and you get home and you just like, oh, your favorite couch, I don't know, your favorite TV show, your favorite everything is that feeling. And you know what is also the feeling of being home? Something you know, something you recognize, something that is familiar. And then for almost those 3 years, I never had a feeling like that. And now I just like, oh, I just want to stay here. I want to be at home. And it's when something else happened, although I had seen my body in the water, up to this point, I didn't have the clarity, the clear realization of who I was. And it's when I realized, whoa, I am not that. I'm not that. And when I had that realization, I realized myself as a being of light. And I started to feel the sense that I was dissolving, like I was being part of everything, that I was just not this independent being, I was connected. But I was still having a sense of self. See, I wasn't just completely, let's say, diluted. I was just also a self. But even that sense disappeared when now I enter into a state that I call, and when I mention it this way, people get scared because I said I experience nothingness, this sense of nothingness. And people like, what? I don't want to be in the nothingness. And I said, no. So I can bring you an analogy. Imagine that there's a huge stadium, and in the middle of the stadium there is a little tiny box, and all you thought you were was that box. And suddenly the box opens and you realize, oh, what? It's nothing, because it's nothing you thought you were. And at the same time, it's wholeness. You realize I'm not just the little box, I'm totality, full interconnection, vastness, expansion. So I could say nothingness or wholeness at the same time. And I like to give this analogy because probably it's one of the most difficult things to explain from the experience. And you can find this in many people that have had NDEs, that you reach the point in which words are not enough to express what this means. Imagine it's a state where there's no meaning, no description, no color, no form, not anything you can use with words, but at the same time it's just complete, plentiful state of expanded being. The only words I can use to describe something like this is absolute presence and just pure consciousness. And when I am in this state of being, and maybe I can mention here that because people ask me, what about God? What about love? I was too young to know these concepts, Sigurd, but later in my life, when I understood what love was or what God was, I could say that at this moment, it was like completely being embraced in the arms of, let's call it father, mother. Is another analogy. Imagine a little baby, and the baby is held by the mom or the dad, and the baby completely loses the sense of individuality because that love is so embracive that you forget that you exist. It's just like, oh, you become the mom and the dad. That's how I experience God. And that's how I experience love, complete and total. When I am in this state of bliss, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing, she knew exactly where to go. And when she arrived home, she didn't waste time going to any room, nothing. She went to the back of the house. And my oldest sister was there. Like, I am answering all the questions as we go, because people ask to why she didn't go and call the maid, because we didn't supposed to be playing there. So of course she knew that if she went to the maid, we will get scolded. So at that moment, she's trying to help me to get out of the tank. She could have fallen too, but when my mom get there, she tells my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. My mom jumped in the tank. She pulled me out. She said that I was like a raggedy doll. No pulse, no breathing, nothing. Like my mom, this is also that incredible synchronicities in life. My mom worked with children and she was trained to do CPR for children. So at that moment, she grabbed this body and she started to do, imagining that fear, to do anything she could do to revive me.
Were you watching this but like, do you remember watching like your mom jump in the tank, or no, none of that? None of that you remember?
None of that. I have to tell you, Segi, that at this point in the state of being as I was, I completely disconnected from this body. My sense was I was not planning to come back at all. If I could have had the choice, which it was not my case, I would have said, I want to stay. But no, I didn't feel anything. I was so disconnected to this reality, to this body, that it was like nothing was happening.
Do you remember where you were at this time? Like when your mom was, or
no, just in the state of, just in that expansive state of being, in the light, because where I was and the way I experienced was complete and total, let's call it white light, just in that state of being in the light. But I had a feeling. The feeling was like if I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And I started to feel like I was being pulled, like I was being sucked. And there's nothing I could do, like a vacuum cleaner. And I, more than, again, it's really, really hard to describe this state of being at that moment, but I could just bring the clarity of how it felt to feel that you're being pulled back and you resist. And I was like, no. And then it's like you're holding yourself from like wanting to be back in the body. And I knew I was back. Yes, the moment I felt the coldness, the sickness of the body. Imagine again going from that expansive state of being into the little box. And I was very angry. And some people may ask, how could you not be happy? I mean, I was only about to be 3 years old. One, and two, another analogy. Imagine you're in an amusement park and you're having the happiest day of your life. And suddenly the parents say, oh, we have to go. What is your reaction to that? Of course not. You're going to cry. You're going to throw a fit. That's what happened to me at that moment. I just did not want to be back. And from there, things kind of turn a little difficult, not just because I didn't want to be back, but because I came back with an awareness that I didn't have before. And people may ask, but you were just a child. Oh no, there was clearly a before and after. And we can expand on that if you want to. Or
Yeah. What do you mean?
okay, good. I'm glad that you asked. Yes. When I came back, I had the clarity that I was not a body, that I was more. Imagine for a child to have this knowledge, like I am not just a body. I have seen myself as a being of light. I had experienced this sense of expansive state of being. When I look at my parents, because I had experienced that sense of oneness, unity, the sense of being interconnected with everything, I was just like, these are not just my parents. I felt them as my equal. And I became very rebellious. And I didn't want to hear what they have to say. When I look at myself again in the mirror, I will realize I am not a child. What happened is that when we have the clarity that, and that's when the part of reincarnation or the part of the eternity of the soul come to play, is when, and of course, these are things that became more clear to me through time. It's not that at 2 years old, I comprehended everything. I experienced it, and through time, things started to make sense. But it's it's the sense that knowing the eternity of our soul. And when you know that Ingrid or Sigurd is just a parenthesis in the eternity that we are. So when I came back and I look at myself, I just cry and say, I'm not a child. And I never felt like I was a child again. And when I would look at other children, I would just cry and say, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So of course, for me, the knowledge and the clarity I have was already too evolved for the people around me. And there was not understanding around me of what is happening to this child. And this is not all. To really validate that something was happening to this child, again, I'm just about to be 3. And after my experience, suddenly they started to realize that I could read, I could write, I could develop mathematical problems, I could put together complex puzzles. So little by little, these things started to show up in me. And to me, even when I now later went to school, everything I learned was easy. And my answer was, I'm not learning anything, I'm just remembering. At the beginning, was very traumatic, was very hard because I didn't have the language to express what was happening to me. So I just, again, was rebellious, was crying a lot, and But thankfully, for me, something else happened besides all this, and the help that I needed came in this amazing, remarkable way, and is that I started to communicate with I recognize as beings of light, and that's how I was able to manage. What happened is that no longer after my near-death experience, I started to have what is called what we know today as out-of-body experiences.
I'm sorry. How old were you when you had your first out of body? Like, when did this start happening?
3 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and
So
it
you
was
were.
spontaneous. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it wasn't that long. You were kind of rebellious, right? But you're frustrated. You can't really communicate, and then you're like, okay. And then you started having out of body experiences and communicating with light beings at 3. So probably months
Yes.
later. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And I will go to sleep first. I didn't know what was happening. I will go to sleep and I will go back. It was actually pretty scary because when I will close my eyes, I would hear sounds that I have never experienced in this physical reality. Very scary kind of sounds. And I would just experience movements, frequencies, velocities extremely fast and very slow, things that I have never experienced here, colors, a bunch of stuff. And then that happened for a while. And it was scary, and I will come out of it. And then one of those days, it went a step further and I went into the light again. When I realized that this was a process to bring me to the light, now that part, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wanted to go there. And then that's why I didn't see the beams of light right there. It was a process. Then first I started to have this transition. Then now I went into being in the light. And after being in the light a few times, in one of these journeys, one day I was completely surrounded by starlight figures, and they were shining in all different colors. So imagine it's like being at night looking at the stars, but this was all a white light space, and I'm looking at stars that are shining in. Now there's another word for it, orbs. For me, were like starlight figures. And then in another journey, one of those orbs that was shining in golden light shaped itself into a human form. And it's when I finally had the realization, you are a being of light. It touched me. And I'm like, oh, okay, because I have realized myself as light too. And I don't know, about a movie called, what is it? Now I forgot the name. It's a movie about extraterrestrials, and it's when one of the extraterrestrials ripped like the skin, and out of the skin comes light. Oh my God. The name of the movie is completely, I will remember. But it was one of the times in my life. I was only like later 13 or 14 years old when this movie came. And when light came out, when the being, this person ripped the skin off, I'm like, that's what we are. We are light. So that's just that recognition. We are that light. And then from that time, I started to see the beings of light. And at the beginning, they didn't do or say anything, but just their presence brought me to just feel peace. But guess what? I wanted to sleep all the time because I wanted to be with the beings of light. And then, of course, my parents have fired the lady that wasn't paying attention, and I drowned in the tank, and they hired a new one. But hey, you're a child that's sleeping, and she doesn't have to do any work because you're there sleeping. That's good. So she let me sleep a lot, but now it comes the place of balance. I could not be the child that was sleeping forever. So to balance this, one day, I am now 4 years old, and I am taking a shower. And just in the relaxation of this shower, suddenly a blue intense light shone in the bathroom. And is when this was incredible, because it's like, now the beings of light are here. And it's when later in my life, this was again the teachings and the way of understanding things with more clarity happened many years later. But it was the beginning of a teaching, the understanding that home is not a place, it's a state of being. How? Because when I was sleeping and I was seeing beings of light, or I was having these out of body experiences, I always have the sense I have to go somewhere. I have to go to that place of light. But when the beings of light started to show here, and I started to feel good here, and like the sense of like, oh, now the beings of light are here, I started to feel home here. So it's when I don't have to go there. See, I don't have to go anywhere. So it was that the beginning of that teaching, home is not a place, it's a state of being. And same thing, at the beginning, the beings of light didn't have to say anything. They were just here. And I could see them everywhere. But one day I threw a big tantrum. And that day was the first time I started to hear. Before it was like I could feel, I could smell, the presence is like, how you smell flowers. It's incredible. And then that day I threw a big tantrum because after my near-death experience, the level of detachment I experienced from the body was such that I never felt attached again. I didn't have attachment to my parents, to people, to this world, and I didn't have attachment to my name. So I would always feel aggravated when they call me Ingrid. And I said, "Uish, don't call me like that. That's not my name." And then the lady was calling me to eat dinner, and I'm like, oh, and I would not pay attention. So she came all mad, like, Ingrid, we're calling you for dinner. And I said, don't call me like that. That's not my name. So of course she's like, then what is your name? Imagine that kind of child who can understand anything.
You became a parent's worst nightmare.
I did. So poor my parents, now I pity them. I'm sorry. And then I said, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And she said, then what is your name? Imagine the answer I gave was, I do not need one. They sent me to bed. You're being too much. So, okay, I went to bed. I was crying. I was mad. And it's when I heard, for the first time, a voice. And when people ask me how they talk, how is the voice was like, if I'm listening to you, was that real? I would just say it was like 3D. And I heard the voice like whispering in my ear, almost like a secret. It's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. Labels are needed here. Of course, we need them as in our human experience, and we need a name in our human experience, but in the realm of the light, names are not needed, to the point that later in my life, when I gathered with many beings of light, because I met them from that essence of what they are, I never needed a name. So nowadays when people ask me about what is the name of this guy, or what is the name of whatever, the angel, whatever it is, I always say it was never necessary for me, so I never ask. And then they also told me that and at that moment I realized, of course, I'm not crazy. Now I know why I don't need a name. And then the other thing, they told me not to share with anybody because they were not going to understand. But imagine for a 4-year-old, what? What is not to understand? What is happening to these people? And then the other thing, they said there will be people in your path to help you and to guide you. And you will never be alone, so don't worry. And then, very quick, I understood that people were not open, or they didn't know. These things, even nowadays, after all my years, it was hard to talk about it and to have the language imagined back then, when people didn't even know about near-death experience and didn't know about any of this. So I had to remain quiet for many, many, many years. But thankfully, I have to bring this to you because how the validation came, thanks God, when I was young too, because when I turned 5 years old and I started to go to school, of course, the beings of light told me not to talk about them, but they never said not to paint. And I started to paint beings of light everywhere because as a child, you have to express yourself. And the need for validation is enormous. We need to belong. We need to be validated. And then the teacher was curious. She came because, one, I was already like a weird kind of child of, you can imagine. And two, I'm painting these things everywhere. And she's like, okay, are these the star? The sun? Like, whoa. And I said, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. Whoa, the teacher thought, oh God, she's having imaginary friends. Let's call the parents. And my mom came to school. My dad was busy. And when she started to show my mom all the paintings, she's like, whoa. And they're describing the paintings and everything. And then at that moment, my need to just be heard, I said, Mom, these are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. At the moment, my mom made me these big mom eyes, like, be quiet. And I just went quiet, and she just told the teacher, this is just a phase, we will fix it. My mom was a teacher. She didn't want that I have problems at school, so let's go, let's get out of here. And then we discovered, because of the drawings, that I could also see auras. So that was another thing. I thought everybody could see this too. And then on the way home, I was so sad, thinking nobody believes me. I'm alone. And it's when my mom confessed something to me. She says, I believe you because I also can see things nobody can.
What?
And it's when I learned that my mom could see what we call spirits. And to clarify this, later in my life, at the age of 6, I started to see spirits too. And then is when I realized that what my mom was seeing and I was seeing was not the same. My mom always thought we were seeing the same thing, but when I saw the first spirit, I had the biggest scare of my life. And then that very day, I chased my mom and I said, Mom, what you call it, spirits and what I see are not the same. Yeah. And then when I was, imagine now I am 6, I was able to explain to my mom with now
Mhm.
more clarity. Yeah, what is that I'm seeing? And then my mom started to cry.
What did you see?
She thought that I was seeing angels. So, what I saw,
Yeah, what did you see?
What my mom was seeing is what we call the spirit world, like what we call spirits, like the soul of the people of the dead. What I was seeing was different. I was seeing beings that nowadays people can recognize maybe as angels or archangels or ascended masters, or there's many beings seekers. Through the time I have met many different beings, but it comes the most incredible answer to that. When my mom said that I was seeing angels, I said, Mom, I don't think they are angels because they don't have wings. But of course, I was raised as Catholic, and what we knew was just the angels with wings. So what I was really seeing, now to answer even your question with more depthness, I could see the light. I could see the soul. I could see the soul in the beings, because the answer came to me when I asked directly to the beings of light. I said, what is with those dark spirits? I call them dark spirits because they cause me fear. And I thought that I was going to hear something like, oh, yeah, those spirits, they are different or whatever. No, the answer was incredible. They say that you call spirits, you, us, in essence, we are all the same. We're all soul. We're all light. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. So say that if you are too attached to the matters of the world, if you're too attached to the material world, you lower your vibration and you identify with us and you think you are that and you forget your essence. It's not that you always will be light. You just get covered by, let's call it, is what is called the veil. We get covered by layers. So they said, if somebody is too attached to the world, they get lost. You even forget who you are. And they say, you can help them. You can help them remember who they are. So all of us can always, by remembering who we are, we can help others remember. So in essence, it was one of the most beautiful teachings. In essence, we're all the same. You just have to remember. And then I asked them, are you angels? And this is the answer to your question there too. I said, and the answer was incredible. They said, we are what you want us to be. So you can call us whatever you want. See, it's like you. Imagine you can say to me, no, my name is this or my name is that. Who cares? At the end of the day, yeah, we're using this name as a way to be part of this human reality. But you are a soul. You're nameless. You are light. And that was another realization I had later in my life. I saw a movie when a person had an accident, a car accident, and this person got amnesia because of this car accident and forgot everything about himself. He didn't recognize his family. He didn't even remember his name, but he was a being. So I said, if you're not your name, you're not your family, you're not your role, if you're not anything you think you are, but you still are. So are you the outer? So that was a recognition. We are and always will be presence, light, a being, a soul. Yeah.
So okay, so I want to back up though. So when you said it was the scare of your life, was it scary looking though? Is that why it scared you? And you were like, "Ooh, what are they?" Like, were they, when you say they're dark beings, were they what I would describe as like demons type looking? Is that why they were scary, or no? You're just saying to see them scared you in general.
Yes, I love you ask this question. Yes, and this is a very important question because everything is a matter of vibration. So why were they scary? Not because they were bad or anything like that. Is because of vibration. When you are connected with forces that are very, very elevated in vibration, you vibrate very high. And when somebody is very, very attached to matter has a lower vibration. So these beings are, when you see a spirit that is attached to this world, the ones that have not, that's why we do the prayer, go to the light, or somebody died and you're like, oh, go to the light. What means? Increase your vibration and shine the light that you are. Otherwise you get trapped. And those are the spirits that we see like around. There's just beings that are trapped in this world. So the fear was not because this was a bad being. It was because of vibration. This being was vibrating lower because it was attached to matter. And it was attached to the things, not just matter, we attached to emotions, we attached to the mind that is stuck in the likes and unlikes and whatever desires. So at that moment, of course, I'm vibrating very high. For you to connect with beings of light, you have to vibrate very high. and beings that are of very high vibrational frequency, they have to sometimes lower their vibration. Your vibration have to be very high. So when I met this being that was vibrating lower, it wasn't that he was a scary being. It was just a matter of vibrations that were no matching up. So it scared me. It spooked me like, whoa, what the heck is this thing? And I also saw him like a shadow. So imagine it's also the appearance. And also this being had a very bad mood. I could not see a face, but I could feel the emotional charge of this being. And it was in a very bad mood. Was so of course all that in terms of vibration. Imagine when you meet a person and you have the chemistry or not, is that same feeling like, oh, I don't like this person. It just feels weird. Same thing. So that's how it works.
Wow. What an incredible way to grow up. I mean, so do you think you planned that? Because that definitely altered your life in a big, big way. Do you think you planned that near death experience like that was supposed to happen so that you would awaken and be on this path earlier?
Oh, I love your questions. Yes, definitely I did, like all of us do. We all pre-plan. And in my case, I had to remember faster. In my case, I meant to share the way I'm sharing, so it had to happen that way. Look, later in my life, many years later again, when I asked the question, why this near death happened when I was so young? And they said to me, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. So it was the plan that I would share this experience from that place of purity. I didn't have any preconceived ideas. I didn't even know what that was at that age. So it came a way to share something that came from a pure and happened from that child that was pure and innocent. Yeah, so that was definitely something that was planned.
Yeah, it seems that way. Why do you think I guess let me backtrack. So on the other side, right, we are infinite beings. Like you talked about it. Like when you think about something, you're there. Your consciousness is definitely running the game, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
come here, we forget who we are. Um, I would imagine too, because that's the most effective way to learn specific situations, right? Whatever it is you're trying to learn. I had someone break it down for me and I really like it. So I'll talk about it. But they said, oh, let's say you put on a VR headset, right? And
Yes,
you
yes.
wanted to experience what it was like to be on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, right? And they said, so you're there, we have this technology, it's incredible. It feels lifelike. You're looking around, you're like, whoa, this feels real. But what's the one thing that's keeping this from being like real? And it's the fact that you remember, you put on a headset. And so the second you don't remember you have that on, that's when you get the real experience because now you're like, oh, you think you're there. Right. And so that made sense to me why memory is important to be wiped. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I guess here's my question. Why is it important to wake up then? Why is it important to remember who we are here? Like, what is the purpose of that, do you think?
Say that I always put the example of a little baby. Imagine that you are a little baby and you don't even know where you come from. You're just this pure, innocent child. You don't know your origin. You don't know that. And and again, if we put it in everything is like a blueprint. A little moment is always a blueprint of the eternity that we are. Everything is like a symbol. So you can use the analogy, the symbol of a little child here to resemble the entire length of your existence. So imagine that when you were created, what happened is that when the little baby is born, it's pure innocent, but it doesn't know it comes from the mom. You don't know. Go and ask a little baby, you know that you come from that mom? Of course not. How long it takes for the child to really realize, oh yeah, I came from my mom. I know maybe 4 or 5 years old. I don't know. So imagine same thing with us. Oh, we're an emanation. We're an extension of the divine, but we don't know who we are. So it takes all these experiences and all this process to, oh, finally start realizing that's who I am. That's where I come from. That's my origin. Oh, so see, that's how the child, imagine we're just childs, we're just children in the realization of who we truly are. We don't know who we are until we don't know. You know, it's funny. The only way to know who you truly are is by knowing what you are not. See? So just through all these experiences, you're like, oh, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, until you peel the layers and you get to the core of what you truly are. So this is what human experience give us, is the possibility to experience contrast. Without that contrast, it's impossible to know. How can you know what you are? How can you know sadness if you have never been happy? Or how can you know happiness? Say that the core that you are is joy. But contrast never came, sadness never happened to you, so you cannot know
Yeah, the
that
paradox
essence
is
of joy.
essential to our experience. The paradox of it all. Like the whole thing is a paradox. It really is.
Exactly. How can you know and appreciate health if you've never been sick? See, so you cannot know that you are a soul, that you are light, if you don't experience the opposite. See, if you don't experience what we call the contrast, the darkness, the challenge, you cannot know the other side. So the only way to know that you are that essence, that soul, that extension, that divinity, is by knowing what you are not. And only all those experiences bring you little by little to realize, oh, wow, everything gives you a glimpse of what you are, until by consciousness, by awareness, you start remembering or realizing your truth, your nature. And it was very difficult too. It was, oh my, growing like this, it wasn't an easy journey, because imagine being a complete alien.
You're totally
Imagine that.
different than every other kid. Nobody, and then to have that understanding when no one else does is very difficult. It's very lonely.
Very lonely. It was a very lonely journey. Yeah, and it took many years, to the point that, yeah, there's a point where you're like, you better don't talk about this, because then the more you talk, the more different. So there was a moment in my life. I was 19 years old. You know, the other person that appeared in my life that was extremely important for me was my grandmother. And my grandmother, who was like my dad's mother, her importance was like such, because everything in life could stay as an experience. If there's no depthness, it's just another experience. But my grandmother, again, as part of the plan, she came to show me the path of what we call spirituality. We're all spiritual, we just don't know it. So what is she doing with her presence? She brought me to learn things like meditation, calm the mind. My mom taught me prayer. My grandma taught me meditation. By the age of 8, I was already meditating. And she started to bring all the spiritual books, and she started to show me. And from that very point in my life, I started to investigate, to study. By the age of 9, I was reading books of self-realization, books of discernment. I was reading the scriptures of, like, the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I'm already wanting to make sense of what is that I am experiencing and that nobody understands.
Yeah, the experience is so important. I had someone in the comments, it was 2 days ago. They said something like, well, if we know everything on the other side, why is it important to come in here and reincarnate? And I just kind of said, was like, look, and I'd be curious on your answer. This was my answer. It seems to me like knowledge and experience are two separate things. Like, you can't knowledge your way to experience, but you can experience your way to knowledge, right? You can experience is the best form of knowledge, really, because I can tell you what it's like to ride a bike, but until you ride a bike, or I can tell you what it's like to be in love, but until you're in love, those are different levels of understanding. Is that how you would describe why we have to come here and experience, or something different?
Yes, there's a very big difference between believing and knowing. people ask me, do you believe this or this and that? I said, no, I don't believe. I know. So yeah, once you experience it yourself, otherwise is like when we just go and read a lot of scripture, yeah, it's important to have that knowledge. But up to that moment, you're only knowing through reading, through academics, so it's the kind of knowledge that is of the mind. And once you experience, it goes beyond the mind. Now you truly know it. Now is the knowing. And again, yes, as essence, imagine if like, just to give you another analogy, imagine like when two parents, when a child come to this world, in essence, it could have my genetics. It could have, so I could just say, oh, he's supposed to know everything because he comes from me. Yeah, in essence, the essence of imagine, and the genes and everything know how to create this new child, and see in the process of the essence of who we are, all that knowledge is present, but now we have to make it conscious. So again, we go back to the little baby that has to regain the consciousness to know who he truly is through experience. So he learned how to walk, he learned how to all that, and through experience now, yeah.
Well, what an incredible journey. I want to get your take on maybe some current affairs, things that are going on right now, and then we'll wrap this up. But what is your take on artificial intelligence and all the buzz of this going on, and how does that affect or correlate with the spiritual awakening that also seems to be happening, where a bunch of people are raising their consciousness? How do you see these? How does it intertwine, in your opinion, I guess?
I just think that everything has a pro and everything has a con. Everything, because this is a dual reality. So wherever you are in a place where there's duality, there's always going to be the plus and the minus, isn't it? So with the AI, I just think in a way it's great. The same thing as internet. Look, if there was no internet, how you and I could be sharing all this knowledge and passing all this information to the world. Like how many people have now been able to say, I had a similar experience, and me looking at the experiences of others, making sense of my own. And look how now this boom of like people being able to share, and spirituality and everything else like happening around the globe. So again, AI also has given the opportunity to many people to free time, maybe for other things they need to do. And instead of answering an email for 10 hours, like, hey, how can I? It's like having a helper right there handy for many, many, many things. The important thing is always, where is my level of awareness? Where is my consciousness in relation with this? There's people that will use things for bad, and there's people that will use things for good. Look, this is one thing I have learned with extreme clarity, and this was a teaching I received from the beings of light. They always say, do not be concerned for what others do. Not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you correct yourself first. I cannot do anything with the evil others do, but I can do everything for the good or evil I do. So where I am, where is my responsibility with myself and the world? You know that words saying by Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. That's not a slogan, that's a truth. So where I am, this is the other thing. And another very important teaching I received, never think in terms of the collective. When you think in terms of the collective, you disempower yourself. Because again, if I am thinking, what is the AI going to do for the world? Oh my God, now I am out there. What can I do? You disempower. And to wrap up, imagine that I can give you an analogy that there's a castle. And there's a huge castle, and this castle is a mess. And you make the wise decision, I'm going to organize this castle today. oh gosh, what is the first feeling? Is the whole thing and it's a castle, is a mess? You disempower yourself. But what if with your ingenuity, with your strength, with the help of the AI, you decide, hey, help me organize the kitchen. Oh no, I cannot even go with the kitchen. That's too much. Help me organize the table, not even the table. Okay, this corner. And you start there. And the moment you organize the corner and it looks sharp and awesome, you're like, wow, look what I can do. And you invite others to see the change. That's when you empower yourself. So I always say, don't look out there. Where are your intentions? Where are you? What is the work you're doing for the world? So be that role model for the world. Look at your good and work correcting your own self. So you don't have to be afraid about what is going to happen out there.
Such a great message. Yeah, there's a lot of fear around it, and so I love that you said that. It's all again focusing back on yourself, right? Um,
Yeah.
okay, I love it. How can people get a hold of you? Is the best way through your website? I'm going to link everything. I'm going to link your book. You have an incredible book, A Brightly Guided Life. I'm going to link it in the notes. It has, gosh, you have a ton of reviews, almost 500 reviews, 4.7 stars. That's amazing. I'll link that in the notes. Is website the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yes, my website. And just to let you know, I already wrote a second book. It's right now out there in review. So
Okay.
hopefully by next year or by the end of this year or next year, that book will be out there too. So it's
Amazing.
called Dying to See the Light. So
Okay. Dying to see the light.
yeah.
Well, this was an incredible conversation. Fascinating. I mean, you have one of the earlier NDEs I've ever encountered. I have one other guy, Jacob, who had a similar one early on, but um, really cool to see how you've taken that though, and obviously it was very difficult, and it was a unique journey for you, but to see where you are now, right? And you're you're a coach. You're so many different things now. You offer so many different services, and you're the type of person that's definitely needed. So I know on your website you do one-on-one coaching, monthly mentorings. What is your favorite thing to do for people? Like, do you prefer to do the one-on-ones? Do you like speaking? What do you like to do the most?
Oh, I like everything. I mean, you know how I feel, Sierra, that I am just a vehicle. And it's like, and even for any of these things, it's always the work of like, okay, Ingrid, move out of the way. And how can I be that vehicle for the light to shine through? So wherever I am, even if it's, I never think, this is again, never think in terms of numbers, but being the best for that person that is needing your help at that moment. So if it's one person and, oh, that light shined the strongest, and that person was able to say, thanks to this, I am one step further in my evolution as to remember my soul. I already feel like the shine, like happiness. So it doesn't matter. It could be one person or many. It doesn't matter. It's not the numbers, but the quality, not the quantity.
Well, Ingrid, thank you again for coming on. I would love to have you on again someday. Definitely, as your second book gets released or becomes live, I would love to promote that as well. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am very honored. And yes, of course, I'm happy to come back anytime.
All right. I will keep you posted when this launches. And until next time.
Yes.
All right. Cheers,
Bye.
Ingrid. Bye.